The scene begins with a map of Venezuela, illustrating its location. Venezuela's geographical context and neighboring countries are highlighted. The analysis will focus on 4 key domains. These domains include politics, economy, military, security, and social, cultural aspects. The U.S. exerts influence over Venezuelan elites through various diplomatic channels. This influence includes applying pressure on key figures within the Venezuelan government. The U.S. also navigates potential negotiation pathways with the fragmented Venezuelan opposition. These strategies aim to promote political stability and democratic processes in Venezuela. Political outcomes can be assessed based on probabilities. A managed but unstable transition has a 50% probability. This suggests a likely scenario involving controlled change with inherent instability. A prolonged stalemate is estimated at a 30% probability. This indicates a significant chance of prolonged political deadlock. Sharp escalation is the least probable outcome, with a 20% chance. Venezuela's oil flows are significantly impacted by international factors. U.S. sanctions play a crucial role in shaping Venezuela's oil export capabilities. Tanker interdictions further restrict the volume of Venezuelan oil exports. These restrictions directly affect Venezuela's economic stability. Reduced export volumes limit Venezuela's access to foreign currency. The interplay of sanctions and interdictions creates challenges for Venezuelan oil trade. Economic forecasts suggest a shallow recovery period. The recovery is projected to be uneven across different sectors. This indicates a lack of substantial economic improvement. Despite potential stabilization, a true recovery is not assured. The bar graph visually represents this projected economic outlook. These projections highlight the challenges in achieving robust economic growth. The Venezuelan economy faces potential contraction risks. These risks include the possibility of further economic decline. One factor contributing to this risk is the enforcement of harsher sanctions. Stricter sanctions could limit economic activity and trade. Reduced economic activity may lead to further contraction. Therefore, sanctions enforcement poses a significant threat to Venezuela's economic stability. Operation Southern Spear involved multiple U.S. military strikes. The operation's geographical scope is visually represented on an animated map. The map displays the locations of over 30 individual strikes. Each strike location is marked to provide a clear understanding of the operation's reach. Casualty figures associated with these strikes are also indicated. Kinetic actions involve the use of military force, often in the form of strikes. These actions can include airstrikes, targeting specific locations or vessels. Naval strikes are another form of kinetic action, typically involving attacks from sea-based assets. A common target for these actions is alleged drug trafficking vessels. The scenario focuses on de-escalation strategies in a military context. De-escalation involves a reduction in military strikes. Increased emphasis is placed on training initiatives. Intelligence sharing with the transitional government is enhanced. The goal is to transition towards stability through non-kinetic means. Strikes often have unintended and devastating consequences for civilian populations. There can be a significant disconnect between official reports and the actual experiences of those affected. Civilian casualties represent a profound human cost in conflict situations. The reality of loss contrasts sharply with the often sanitized narratives presented. Understanding the impact on civilians is crucial for ethical considerations in conflict. Visualizations can effectively highlight the dissonance between perceived and actual realities of strikes. Venezuelan society is experiencing deepening polarization. This polarization is leading to societal trauma. Competing narratives contribute to the divide. One narrative describes the situation as narco-terrorism. The opposing narrative frames it as imperialist attacks. Regime decapitation involves the removal of a regime's leader or key figures. This action aims to destabilize or dismantle the existing political structure. The visual representation depicts Maduro's capture and extradition. However, the regime's underlying structures remain intact. This suggests that removing leaders alone may not fully dismantle a regime. A post-authoritarian cartel of factions can emerge after authoritarian rule. This outcome contrasts with the establishment of a clean democracy. The cartel involves various factions vying for power. A network diagram can illustrate the relationships and power dynamics within such a cartel. The scene depicts a political transition framework in progress. A U.S.-backed interim authority is a key player in the transition. Negotiations are underway involving the interim authority, old elite segments, and the opposition. These negotiations are occurring under external pressure. influencing the dynamics. The framework aims to establish a new political order. The process involves balancing competing interests and external influences. Political fragmentation occurs when a state's authority is divided among multiple actors. These actors may include warlords, gangs, or military factions. These groups exert de facto control over specific regions. This leads to a situation of dual power, where both the state and non-state actors govern. The map visually represents this division of control, highlighting areas of fragmentation. The simulation depicts a sharp re-escalation of political tensions. This includes direct strikes against land-based targets. The scenario also involves increased proxy violence. This proxy violence extends into neighboring states, causing regional instability. The visualization presents a timeline of over 30 U.S. strikes on vessels. The data spans from September 2025 to the present. Each strike is represented as a data point on the timeline. The visualization provides a statistical overview of U.S. maritime actions. The report focuses on the human cost of the strikes. A tally indicates at least 110 to 115 people have been killed. The count represents the confirmed fatalities resulting from the strikes. Emphasis is placed on accounting for those who are currently missing. The missing persons are presumed to be victims of the strikes. Efforts are likely underway to identify and recover the missing. The narco-terrorist label conflates the war on drugs with the war on terror. This conflation blurs the distinct objectives and strategies of each effort. It expands the perceived scope for employing military force. The label can legitimize interventions under the guise of counterterrorism. This may lead to mission creep and broader geopolitical involvement. Transitional periods in politics are often characterized by instability. These periods involve shifts in power, structures, and governance. Contested power dynamics are a common feature during transitions. This can lead to uncertainty and potential conflict. The overall environment is typically chaotic and unpredictable. The scene depicts a U.S. military operation focused on interdicting Venezuelan oil tankers. The operation involves active pursuit of the targeted tankers. Detailed planning is shown as a key component of the interdiction strategy. The Venezuelan oil tanker Marinera is specifically identified as a target. The interdiction aims to disrupt or prevent the tanker's activities. U.S. forces are the primary actors executing this maritime operation. The Venezuelan government allegedly utilizes vessels for dual purposes. These vessels are reportedly used for transporting oil. They are also allegedly involved in narcotic shipments. This dual-use strategy poses complex challenges for international monitoring and enforcement. Oil export volumes are currently experiencing constraints. These constraints are influenced by international sanctions. Deals negotiated through sanctioned channels provide some stability. These deals contribute to a steadier, though still limited, export volume. Overall, oil exports remain below their potential due to these factors. The U.S. employs selective targeting as an economic strategy. This strategy focuses on specific entities, such as tankers, to exert influence. Targeting tankers is a method to control the flow and distribution of resources. This control provides the U.S. with leverage in economic and political negotiations. Selective targeting allows for a calibrated approach, avoiding broad economic sanctions. The goal is to achieve specific objectives while minimizing unintended economic consequences. Stricter enforcement measures are projected to significantly impact the economy. A primary consequence is a sharp reduction in export volumes. This decline in exports directly affects state revenue stream. Reduced exports lead to a contraction in overall economic activity. The shrinking state revenue further exacerbates economic challenges. The projection indicates a negative feedback loop between enforcement, exports, and state finances. Partial sanctions relief is contingent on specific political conditions. These conditions are determined by the U.S. and regional stakeholders. A transitional authority must meet these conditions to qualify for relief. The relief is partial, indicating not all sanctions are lifted. This mechanism links sanctions policy to political progress. Venezuela faces a severe crisis marked by degraded infrastructure. This degradation impacts essential services such as water, electricity, and transportation. Years of underinvestment and mismanagement have exacerbated the problem. Hollowed-out institutions struggle to maintain and repair existing infrastructure. The lack of functional infrastructure hinders economic activity and development. These conditions contribute to a decline in the overall quality of life for Venezuelan citizens. The economy is experiencing a period of anemic growth. This growth is characterized by a real GDP increase of only 0 to 3%. Such a low growth rate indicates a lack of robust economic expansion. The current economic situation reflects stabilization rather than genuine development. This suggests underlying issues are preventing stronger economic performance. The year 2026 is designated as a period of economic stabilization. It is also a year focused on leveraging existing resources and opportunities. The primary objective is to consolidate economic conditions rather than achieve full recovery. Therefore, expectations should be set for stabilization and strategic advancement, not a complete turnaround. Oil and sanctions can be employed as bargaining instruments in economic negotiations. These tools are sometimes prioritized over strategies for long-term development. The use of oil as leverage can influence trade agreements and political alliances. Sanctions are often imposed to pressure specific economic or political changes. This visualizes a timeline of military strikes. The timeline focuses on strikes against alleged drug trafficking vessels. These strikes occurred from September 2025 onwards. Over 30 strikes are represented on the timeline. The visualization provides a chronological overview of these military actions. Operation Southern Spear resulted in a significant number of military casualties. The total number of fatalities during the operation ranged between 110 and 115 individuals. These figures represent the loss of life directly attributed to the military actions. The statistics highlight the human cost associated with Operation Southern Spear. Each casualty represents a profound loss for the families and communities involved. The data underscores the serious nature and impact of military engagements. Military operations are expanding their scope of targets. The initial focus was primarily on boats used for transportation. The target set now includes facilities involved in illicit drug production. This expansion aims to disrupt the entire supply chain. Targeting production facilities directly impacts the source of illicit drugs. This broadened approach seeks to dismantle the infrastructure supporting illegal activities. A large-scale military strike is visualized. The strike is aimed at capturing a specific individual, Maduro. The operation takes place during daylight hours. The visualization depicts the execution of the strike. The ultimate goal is the apprehension of Maduro. Naval warfare often presents challenges in distinguishing between combatants and non-combatants. This distinction is crucial under international law and the laws of armed conflict. Search and rescue operations may encounter individuals who are both survivors and potential combatants. The presence of military personnel or equipment on a vessel can blur the lines of identification. The laws of war require careful assessment to determine an individual's status. Failure to properly distinguish can lead to violations of international humanitarian law. This scenario depicts a sustained, low-intensity kinetic military campaign. The campaign involves ongoing military actions at a reduced scale. Airstrikes are employed intermittently to target specific objectives. Naval strikes are also used sporadically as part of the overall campaign strategy. Military operations focus on identifying and interdicting remaining drug boats. These boats are considered potential targets due to their involvement in illicit activities. Animated maps are utilized to highlight the locations and movements of these vessels. This visualization aids in strategic planning and resource allocation for interdiction efforts. Coastal facilities are sometimes considered potential targets in military strategy. These facilities may include ports, naval bases, or critical infrastructure along the coastline. Military analysis often involves identifying and assessing the strategic value of such locations. Graphics are used to visually represent suspected coastal facilities and their potential significance. The identification of these targets is a key aspect of coastal defense and offensive planning. This visualization focuses on tankers, potentially carrying arms or exhibiting suspicious behavior. The tankers are monitored for activities that deviate from standard shipping protocols. These activities may include unusual routes, unreported stops, or suspicious cargo transfers. The aim is to identify and track vessels that could pose a security threat. The war on cartels is often rhetorically framed as a necessary military action. This framing aims to provide a justification for the use of military force. Cartels are frequently labeled as narco-terrorists within this rhetorical strategy. This label attempts to associate cartels with terrorism. The association seeks to invoke a sense of national security threat. This justification is used to garner public and political support for military intervention. Military training partnerships focus on de-escalation strategies to manage conflicts peacefully. These partnerships often involve collaborative training exercises to enhance communication skills. Intelligence sharing is a key component. providing insights into potential conflict triggers. Joint maritime patrols can be implemented to ensure coordinated responses in maritime environments. The goal is to foster mutual understanding and interoperability between different military forces. De-escalation training aims to reduce the likelihood of armed conflict through proactive measures. Regional spillover involves the spread of conflict-related instability beyond the initial conflict zone. Armed actors may cross borders, destabilizing neighboring states. Disruptions to maritime routes can impact regional trade and security. Refugee flows can strain resources and create social tensions in neighboring countries. These factors can collectively undermine regional stability and security. Animated maps can effectively illustrate these potential spillover effects. Maritime interdictions are operations to intercept and prevent the movement of prohibited items or individuals at sea. These interdictions aim to enforce laws, sanctions, and security measures in maritime environments. Piracy involves acts of robbery or criminal violence at sea, posing a direct threat to maritime security and trade. Ad hoc militias operating in maritime regions can destabilize areas and disrupt legitimate maritime activities. Spikes in these activities indicate increased instability and security challenges in maritime domain. Operational tempo refers to the pace of military activities and operations. A high operational tempo indicates a rapid and intense level of activity. The text suggests the operational tempo will remain elevated. However, it also indicates a calibration or adjustment of this tempo. Calibration implies a more measured and controlled pace. This suggests a sustained but optimized level of military operations. The graphic emphasizes the strategic avoidance of large-scale ground occupation. This approach aims to minimize prolonged military presence in a specific area. It suggests a preference for alternative military strategies. These strategies may include air power, special operations, or support for local forces. The goal is to achieve military objectives without committing extensive ground troops. The U.S. military maintains the right to strike at sea. The U.S. military also maintains the right to strike on targeted Venezuelan territory. This right is part of U.S. military strategy and operational planning. These potential actions are subject to international laws and regulations. Strikes have resulted in casualties across multiple vessels. At least 5 individuals have been confirmed dead following the strikes. The strikes impacted a total of 3 vessels. The incident highlights the devastating consequences of strikes on civilian populations. The scene depicts the aftermath of strikes on boats, resulting in casualties. Specifically, 8 individuals are confirmed to have died as a result of these attacks. These casualties occurred across a series of strikes. The strikes targeted a total of 5 boats. The visualization aims to convey the human cost of these events. The conflict is transformed into a recurring public spectacle. This spectacle involves dramatic events, such as people jumping overboard. The Coast Guard's search for survivors becomes a central element of the spectacle. Animation visually represents these events, amplifying their impact on the public. The U.S. government presents an official narrative regarding individuals killed in specific operations. This narrative often labels these individuals as narco-terrorists. The term narco-terrorist suggests a connection to both drug trafficking and terrorist activities. This label serves to frame the U.S. actions and justify the use of force against these individuals. The Venezuelan government presents a narrative of external threats. This narrative often characterizes these threats as imperialist attacks. These alleged attacks are framed as violations of Venezuelan sovereignty. The narrative also suggests these attacks target Venezuelan citizens. This perspective is promoted through official channels and media. The scene depicts families experiencing grief. The source of grief is the loss of relatives. The relatives were lost at sea. The setting is a social environment, likely involving multiple families. The time of day is daytime. Coastal communities are increasingly exposed to militarized activities. These activities include U.S. drone operations and strikes. U.S. Coast Guard operations are also a significant presence. Youth in these areas grow up under the influence of these operations. This exposure shapes their understanding of security and authority. The presence of military forces can normalize militarization in civilian life. The animation explores social themes through the lens of pop culture. Music is used to underscore the narrative. Local storytelling provides context for the themes presented. Boats, these spaces are also portrayed as areas of hustle and opportunity. Populations exhibit a duality in response to destabilizing conditions. One aspect is anger, directed at external interventions and internal power structures. This anger stems from perceived injustices and disruptions to their lives. Simultaneously, A pragmatic approach to daily survival takes precedence. Basic needs and security concerns often outweigh ideological grievances. This creates a tension between resentment and the need for practical adaptation. The simulation depicts a significant surge in organized resistance. This resistance takes the form of mass mobilization. Organized resistance implies a coordinated effort among individuals or groups. Mass mobilization suggests a large number of people actively participating. The simulation aims to model the dynamics and potential impacts of such a movement. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for analyzing social and political change. The destruction of a civilian boat can be a potent symbol. Such events often evoke strong emotional responses from the public. Visualizing the destruction emphasizes the human cost. This can lead to increased public outrage and condemnation. The event may be framed as an atrocity, further galvanizing opinion. This can result in increased pressure for action or retribution. The narrative focuses on the psychological impacts of maritime incidents. It explores the emotional and mental health challenges faced by seafarers. The narrative highlights the long-term effects of traumatic experiences at sea. It aims to raise awareness about maritime trauma and its consequences. Venezuelan seafarers may face a narco-terror stigma. This stigma can arise from the association of maritime routes with illicit activities. The narco-terror label implies involvement in drug trafficking or terrorism. This perception can lead to increased scrutiny and suspicion. Seafarers may experience difficulties in international ports. The stigma affects their professional reputation and personal safety. The diagram illustrates a core causal loop. The loop begins with U.S. kinetic pressure. Kinetic pressure initiates a sequence of events. This sequence forms a closed loop of cause and effect. Understanding this loop is crucial for analyzing the system. This scenario depicts U.S. military actions, including strikes and interdictions. These operations are characterized by kinetic pressure, implying active and forceful engagement. The scene includes potential actions aimed at the capture of Maduro. The overall context suggests a high-stakes, interventionist military strategy. Visual elements will likely emphasize the intensity and strategic objectives of these U.S. operations. The scene depicts a fragmented transition, indicating a state of instability. This transition involves a breakdown or division of a previously unified entity. The animation visually represents the contested nature of sovereignty during this period. This contested sovereignty suggests a struggle for power and control among different factions. A weaponized economy involves strategically using economic policies and tools for geopolitical advantage. This can include imposing sanctions, tariffs, or trade restrictions on other nations. The goal is to exert pressure or influence another country's behavior or policies. It often involves leveraging a nation's economic strengths to undermine or coerce others. However, weaponizing the economy can also have negative consequences for the imposing nation. These consequences may include damaged trade relations and economic retaliation from targeted countries. Illicit flows represent unauthorized or illegal movements of goods, funds, or people across borders. These flows often involve activities such as smuggling, trafficking, and money laundering. Maritime risk refers to the potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with activities at sea. Persistent illicit flows can exacerbate maritime risks, creating complex security challenges. Social trauma refers to the psychological and emotional wounds inflicted on a community or society. It often arises from widespread violence, oppression, or systemic injustice. Criminal political entanglement describes the interconnectedness of criminal organizations and political systems. This entanglement can manifest as corruption, bribery, or the use of political power to protect criminal activities. The intersection of social trauma and criminal political entanglement can exacerbate societal instability and erode public trust. The ongoing force is justified under the context of a war on cartels. This framing often includes the term narco-terrorism. The justification is presented via text overlay. This framing suggests that cartels pose a national security threat. The key question is whether a legitimate transitional authority can be established quickly. The aim is to determine if this authority can gain broad acceptance. The speed of establishment is crucial for its effectiveness. A rapid emergence is needed to interrupt the ongoing cycle. The cycle refers to a potentially negative or unstable pattern. Therefore, the focus is on the timing and legitimacy of the transitional authority. Following Maduro's removal, multiple factions are competing for political control in Venezuela. These power struggles involve various political parties with differing ideologies. External actors and international alliances also influence the internal dynamics. Economic resources and control over key industries are central to these conflicts. The instability creates challenges for establishing a stable and legitimate government. Various countries and international bodies attempt to sway Venezuela's political landscape. These external actors employ diverse strategies to exert influence. Such strategies can include economic incentives or disincentives. Diplomatic pressure and negotiation also play a significant role. The ultimate goal is often to promote specific political outcomes or stability. Election outcomes can vary significantly, influencing political stability. Different scenarios include landslide victories, narrow wins, or hung parliaments. A landslide victory often leads to a period of strong, decisive governance. Narrow wins may result in coalition governments requiring compromise and negotiation. Hung parliaments can create political deadlock and instability, potentially leading to new elections. Each outcome carries unique implications for policy implementation and overall political climate. Venezuela's economy is significantly reliant on its natural resources. The country possesses vast reserves of oil, a key export commodity. Over-extraction and mismanagement have led to significant resource depletion. This depletion has reduced export revenues, impacting the national budget. Economic diversification is needed to reduce reliance on finite resources. Sustainable practices are crucial for long-term economic stability. Venezuela experienced a period of hyperinflation, characterized by extremely rapid price increases. This hyperinflation significantly eroded the purchasing power of the Venezuelan currency. The crisis led to a drastic decline in the living standards for many Venezuelans. Basic goods and services became unaffordable for a large portion of the population. The hyperinflation crisis had profound and destabilizing effects on daily life in Venezuela. Humanitarian aid represents international efforts to alleviate suffering and improve living conditions. It often involves providing essential resources like food, water, shelter, and medical assistance. The primary goal is to address immediate needs during crises or in areas of extreme poverty. However, humanitarian aid's impact on the overall economy can be limited. Sustainable economic development requires broader strategies beyond immediate relief efforts. Border conflicts arise from disputes over the demarcation or control of territory between neighboring countries. These conflicts often involve military presence and occasional armed clashes. Animated maps can effectively highlight regions prone to such disputes. These maps typically show contested areas and the involved nations. Military resources are often concentrated near these contested borders. Such tensions can escalate, impacting regional stability and international relations. Illegal arms trafficking involves the unlawful movement of weapons across borders. These illicit activities bypass legal regulations and international treaties. Arms trafficking fuels conflicts by providing weapons to unauthorized groups. This proliferation of weapons destabilizes regions and undermines peace efforts. The illegal arms trade exacerbates violence and hinders sustainable development. The diagram illustrates the organizational structure of Venezuelan paramilitary groups. It details the operational activities undertaken by these groups. The structure outlines the hierarchy and command flow within the groups. Operations encompass various activities, including territorial control. Understanding both structure and operations is crucial for analyzing these groups. The Venezuelan displacement crisis involves a mass exodus of people from Venezuela. This exodus is driven by economic hardship, political instability, and humanitarian concerns within Venezuela. Neighboring countries experience significant impacts due to the influx of Venezuelan migrants and refugees. These impacts include strains on resources, infrastructure, and social services in host countries. A public health crisis occurs when a disease or health-related event threatens a community. These crises often overwhelm existing public health resources and infrastructure. Declining public health services can exacerbate the spread of diseases. Reduced access to care and preventive measures contribute to increased infection rates. Effective public health responses require coordinated efforts and resource allocation. Monitoring disease trends and strengthening healthcare systems are crucial for crisis management. Food shortages significantly reduce the availability of essential nutrients. Reduced nutrient intake directly contributes to increased malnutrition rates. Malnutrition weakens the immune system, making individuals more susceptible to diseases. Children are particularly vulnerable to the long-term effects of malnutrition. Addressing food shortages is crucial for improving public health and reducing malnutrition. Political negotiations involve discussions between different factions to reach agreements. Failed negotiations occur when parties cannot find common ground or acceptable compromises. These failures can stem from conflicting ideologies or incompatible demands. Unsuccessful talks often lead to political gridlock and stalled progress. The inability to negotiate can exacerbate existing tensions and division. Repeated failures erode trust and hinder future collaborative efforts. Political corruption involves the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. This abuse can manifest in various forms, including bribery, extortion, and cronyism. Corruption undermines public trust in government and institutions. It also diverts resources away from public services and development projects. Venezuela has experienced a notable decline in democratic institutions. This erosion is reflected in various political and social indicators. Key institutions have been weakened, impacting checks and balances. The independence of the judiciary has been compromised. Electoral processes have faced challenges and criticisms. These factors collectively contribute to the decline of democratic norm. Economic sanctions are political tools used to influence a country's policies or actions. These sanctions typically involve restrictions on trade, investment, or financial transactions. Several countries have imposed economic sanctions on Venezuela due to various concerns. These concerns often include human rights violations, democratic backsliding, and corruption. The sanctions aim to pressure the Venezuelan government to address these issues. The impact of these sanctions on Venezuela's economy and its citizens is a subject of ongoing debate. The black market operates outside the bounds of legal commerce and regulation. It involves the trade of goods and services that are illegal or otherwise prohibited by law. Despite its illicit nature, the black market can contribute to economic activity. It provides goods and services that are unavailable through legitimate channels. This underground economy can have both positive and negative impacts on the overall economy. Venezuela's economy is significantly dependent on oil exports. A large portion of Venezuela's revenue is generated from the oil industry. This over-reliance makes the economy vulnerable to fluctuations in global oil prices. Economic diversification is limited due to the dominance of the oil sector. The chart visually represents the disproportionate contribution of oil to Venezuela's export earnings. Foreign military intervention involves a nation's armed forces entering another country. Interventions are often justified by humanitarian concerns or national security interests. Such actions can destabilize the target country, leading to prolonged conflict. Intervention can result in significant political, economic, and social consequences. The long-term effects of military intervention are complex and often unpredictable. Military coups involve the armed forces seizing control of a government. These actions often result in the suspension of civilian rule and democratic processes. Potential scenarios include a military faction overthrowing the existing regime. Such coups can lead to political instability and international condemnation. Internal conflicts within a military can significantly destabilize its structure and effectiveness. These conflicts often arise from disagreements over leadership, strategy, or resource allocation. Such disputes can lead to factionalism, undermining unit cohesion and operational readiness. Internal strife may manifest as insubordination, mutiny, or even armed clashes within the ranks. The impact extends beyond immediate disruptions, eroding trust and discipline among personnel. Ultimately, internal conflicts weaken the military's ability to respond to external threats and maintain national security. Human rights abuses represent violations of the fundamental rights and freedoms. These abuses can manifest in various forms, including discrimination and violence. Monitoring and documentation are crucial for addressing human rights abuses. Increased awareness and advocacy play a vital role in combating these violations. International cooperation is essential for preventing and addressing human rights abuses globally. Social unrest is often visually represented through depictions of protests and demonstration. These visuals capture collective expressions of discontent or opposition to existing power structures. Common imagery includes large crowds gathered in public spaces, often carrying signs or banners. Visuals may also portray confrontations between protesters and authorities, such as police or military forces. The intensity of the unrest can be conveyed through the expressions and actions of the individuals involved. These visual representations serve to document and communicate the scale and impact of social movements. Reduced access to education can lead to a decline in overall social development. This decline is often reflected in lower literacy rates and reduced skill sets within the population. Diminished educational attainment can limit opportunities for economic advancement and social mobility. Consequently, lack of education can exacerbate existing social inequalities and hinder community progress. Venezuela's international relations have become increasingly strained in recent years. This isolation is reflected in reduced diplomatic ties and alliances. Economic sanctions imposed by various countries have further contributed to Venezuela's isolation. The country faces challenges in international forums and struggles to maintain its global influence. Authoritarian rule concentrates political power in a single leader or a small elite. It is characterized by limited political pluralism and restricted freedoms. Authoritarian regimes often employ strong central control and suppress dissent. Consolidation involves strengthening power through various means, including propaganda and coercion. Political prisoners are individuals imprisoned for their political beliefs or actions. Their imprisonment often stems from opposition to the ruling government or political system. Treatment of political prisoners varies widely, ranging from fair to abusive. International human rights organizations monitor the conditions and advocate for their release. An economic collapse signifies a severe downturn in a nation's economic activity. This downturn is characterized by a significant decline in key economic indicators. Such indicators include GDP, employment rates, and investment levels. Ultimately, an economic collapse leads to a marked reduction in living standards for the population. The map visually represents areas experiencing an increase in poverty rates. Areas with higher poverty rates are typically indicated by darker shades or distinct colors. The map allows for a geographical comparison of poverty levels across different regions. This visual representation helps in identifying areas that may require targeted economic support. Unemployment is a key indicator of economic health. It reflects the percentage of the labor force that is without jobs but actively seeking employment. Rising unemployment often signals an economic downturn or recession. Increased unemployment can lead to decreased consumer spending and investment. Governments and central banks often implement policies to mitigate unemployment's negative effects. Militarization refers to the process by which military values and priorities increasingly permeate civilian society. This can manifest in various forms, including increased military spending and the glorification of military service. The presence of military personnel and equipment in public spaces can also contribute to militarization. Furthermore, the adoption of military-style tactics and technologies by law enforcement agencies is a key indicator. The normalization of military solutions to social and political problems is a significant aspect of societal militarization. Military actions must adhere to international human rights laws and standards. Violations include unlawful killings, torture, and enforced disappearances. Sexual violence and exploitation are also considered grave human rights abuses. Arbitrary arrests, detentions, and unfair trials constitute further violations. Attacks on civilian populations and infrastructure are prohibited under international law. Impunity for perpetrators undermines justice and perpetuates further abuses. Internal purges in the military refer to systematic efforts to remove individuals or groups. These actions are often driven by political, ideological, or disciplinary motives. Purges can target officers, enlisted personnel, or civilian employees within the defense structure. Methods may include forced resignations, dismissals, arrests, or even execution. The consequences can range from weakened military capabilities to widespread fear and distrust. Social psychological trauma refers to the widespread psychological distress within a community or society. It arises from collective experiences of adversity, such as natural disasters or social upheaval. This form of trauma can manifest as increased anxiety, depression, and social fragmentation. It often requires community-level interventions to address the shared psychological wound. Understanding its impact is crucial for fostering resilience and recovery in affected populations. Social services encompass a wide range of support systems designed to improve individual and community well-being. These services address various needs, including healthcare, education, and housing. They also provide assistance with employment, family support, and crisis intervention. Funding for social services typically comes from a combination of government, nonprofit organizations, and private donations. Effective social service programs aim to empower individuals and promote self-sufficiency. The specific types and availability of social services can vary significantly depending on location and community needs. An increase in crime rates reflects a deterioration in social order and safety. Rising crime can be indicative of underlying social issues, such as poverty or inequality. Higher crime rates often lead to increased fear and anxiety within communities. This This can result in decreased social cohesion and trust among residents. Increased crime can also strain public resources, including law enforcement and the judicial system. Political instability often manifests as frequent changes in government. These changes can stem from coups, revolutions, or persistent civil unrest. Such instability undermines investor confidence and disrupts economic activity. Economic downturns can then exacerbate social tensions and political grievances. This creates a cyclical pattern where political and economic factors reinforce instability. Unsustainable economic practices deplete natural resources faster than they can be replenished. These practices often lead to environmental degradation, including deforestation and pollution. Short-term economic gains are prioritized over long-term environmental and social costs. Unsustainable consumption patterns and production methods contribute to global imbalances. Perpetual conflict describes a state of continuous or recurring warfare. This condition often involves ongoing disputes without clear resolution. Military forces are maintained in a constant state of readiness. Resources are continuously allocated to defense and combat operations. The concept highlights the enduring nature of some global conflicts. The scene aims to visually represent despair, a state of profound hopelessness. Visual elements should evoke feelings of sadness, loss, and futility. The overall tone should convey a sense of being trapped and without options. Imagery might include bleak landscapes, isolated figures, or symbols of decay. The goal is to create a powerful emotional impact, reflecting the weight of despair. Venezuela faces complex challenges requiring comprehensive solutions. Sustainable strategies are crucial for addressing these issues effectively. International cooperation is essential to support Venezuela's recovery. Collaborative efforts can provide resources and expertise for development. Internal reconciliation is also vital for long-term stability. A unified approach can foster a more resilient and prosperous future.